Welcome to Manager's Mantra. In today's episode, we are joined by Sreeraman Mohan Girija, better known as SMG, the co-founder of Fynd, one of India's leading retail tech powerhouses. From building when startups weren't yet cool to leading AI-driven platforms like Copilot.live and Pixelbin.io, SMG has seen it all. In this conversation, we'll uncover how he navigated the early challenges of entrepreneurship, the mindset shifts from employee to founder, and his insights on balancing experimentation, execution, and leadership in the age of AI. So let's dive in. So, welcome to Manager's Mantra SMG. It is going to be a great conversation, and I'm very excited for this.
Thank you, Garima.
So I'm gonna jump into the first question, which is, you co-founded Fynd in 2012. That was well before the startup culture even was mainstream in India. So what were the biggest challenges of building in an environment where startups weren't cool yet?
Yes. So I think back in 2012, right, access to risk capital was like really low compared to what in terms of funding startups get around post 2020 and all. So that was one of the biggest challenges that we used to have. And whenever we used to go and pitch to any VC funds, they always used to look for parallels in US. What Find used to do at that point of time back in 2012, there weren't many parallels in US or across the world. So that was one of the main challenges that we had. And of course, we found K Capital who funded us right from the beginning and invested in all the follow-on rounds as well. So I think that was one of the main challenges. And attracting, top tier talent when we used to go for, any sort of recruitment, whether it be campus recruitment or, in office interviews and things like that, convincing people at that point of time to join a startup uh, was very difficult. People were more inclined to join a safe, job in a TCS or Infosys at that point of time. Of course, now things have changed a lot from that. Um, there also used to be, these days you hear about a lot of incentives that the government itself provides to startups. There were very few at that point of time. In fact, I think if I'm not mistaken, Startup India itself was launched in 2016 or something, whereas we started in 2012. But I see things have changed a lot from that time.
That's so true. And I guess, while these are all challenges, but having started as early as 2012 has also given you the kind of experience and knowledge, which probably, it's not as readily available today. So, that's always a thing. That's
Yeah,
a
absolutely. All those experience, compounds over many years.
That's great. Now, going a little behind, you began as a designer and an engineer before you moved into entrepreneurship. So, what was the mindset shift that was most crucial in going from being an employee to becoming a founder?
Uh, I think, and especially when you start out as a designer, engineer, and all, right, you're pretty much in an IC role,
Right.
and your view of things is probably uh, very granular.
Mhm.
But as a founder, I've heard it somewhere, right? And as a founder, your ability to have one eye on telescope and one eye on a microscope, uh, what we call being flexible enough to zoom out for that 10,000 feet view of things and this 10 feet view of things. I think that's one of the biggest sort of mindset shifts that I had to undergo.
Right.
Uh, Another thing that often ends up happening is that when you're an IC, let's say when you're a designer, right, you're working on a file, you're working on a project,
Mhm.
there is an artifact to show for at the end of the day. This is what I worked on, and this is how it looks. But when you're a founder, uh, you know, probably a lot of your time is spent, uh, identifying and fixing problems for your team. And as an IC, you get used to celebrating your wins at the end of the day. But as a founder, you need to be, you need to be able to derive that sort of pleasure and joy from seeing your team succeed. Um, and often when you work as an IC, right, uh, you're so into solving one particular problem that uh, many a times you get almost 100% of the information that is required to take a decision. But as a founder, that's not the case. You're taking decisions across departments every day. And most of the times you need to get comfortable with, taking a decision, moving on when you just have 70% of the information available. And that's a sort of a big mindset, shift that I had to undergo.
That's so true. And given our audience is mainly, people from the B school or, who are just getting into the professional world, be it as an entrepreneur or as a manager, a lot of them also come from these technical engineering backgrounds. And I guess, what you just spelled out is very interesting and very useful advice for them as well. So thank you for that. But if you're talking about tech, and you are definitely a tech guy, we can't leave out AI.
Yeah.
So with AI disrupting industries, do you believe managers of the future need to be tech experts, or should they focus more on human and strategic skills?
Especially from managers, right? I tend to use the word leaders instead of, managers. And, one of the things that I have come to realize over many, many years is that, you could be the most knowledgeable person in the room. You could have some of the best ideas and best solutions to the problems that a company or the team is facing. But if you can't get people to like you and follow you, all that knowledge is pretty useless. So if you were to ask me if as a manager of the future, obviously technical skill needs to be there, your ability to learn things really fast, pick up new technologies. There is no doubt you should have that skill. Uh, but I would also spend a lot of time, uh, honing my, human and strategic skills if you are a future manager.
That's amazing. So, let's talk about your role as a co-founder. How do you balance experimentation with execution, especially in a fast-moving industry like retail tech?
Well, I think in the case of Fynd, right, we have always by nature as a company, we've always, continued to experiment with products and things that are probably not mainstream at that point of time. In fact, most of the products that we have started out as small experiments with small team of, designers and engineers, put together to work on a particular problem. And then after a year or two, when we identify that, oh, this probably integrates very well into the existing platform that we have built. That's sort of the innovation roadmap that we have followed at Find. You start with a small team, you experiment, you figure out, if it works or not, and then you try to figure out you actually try to figure out two things. You try to figure out how do I feed this into my main platform, which is the, retail commerce platform that we have, as well as how do I build this out as an independent revenue stream. During COVID, one of the things that happened, right, in the first 3 months of lockdown, there was hardly any business happening. And as a company, as an organization, being dependent on one industry, being dependent on one platform for all our revenue, that's a lesson that we learned at that point of time, that you need to also diversify your revenue sources, your revenue streams. So all experiments that start out also need to have an independent roadmap to build their own revenue stream. So that's something that we continuously keep doing. The real challenge that a company like us, face is that because we do a lot of these experiments, we get people to, we actually get people excited about a new idea and put up a team to work on that idea. What if it doesn't work out? After a year or two of working on a particular idea, we believe that, this is not working out. So saying when to say no is a very, difficult thing. So that's probably uh, where we also spend. And in fact, over the last few years, we have also, shut down a few of those experiments that we used to run internally. It's a difficult, choice, but with engineers and designers, the good thing is that we're always open to trying out, new things, and they always get excited about, building new technology.
That's amazing. And it's a very unique point that you made about, when to say no and when to stop your experiment. That
Yeah.
very interesting. And, you spoke about the process of how you experiment and, how it is then implemented. But looking back at your journey of taking Fynd from a startup to a retail tech powerhouse, which it is now, what were some pivotal moments or decisions that shaped your growth or the company's growth?
So there were a few, and I think every 3 or 4 years, uh, a pivotal moment happens, and it's up to you to take that, opportunity. So back when we actually started in 2012, right? We started out, so we had this, large touchscreen device that we used to put inside a store, and a customer that walks into a store, let's say a Diesel as a brand, right? So when they walk into the store, there is this model on that touchscreen, and you could mix and match clothes on top of that model to see, what goes well together before you take it to the trial room. And if a product is not available in that store, it would tell you which store it is available and things like that. So we started with that, that idea.
Mhm.
And for a good 2 years, we were able to expand to multiple brands. Uh, but there were challenges. The first challenge was that this hardware, this large touchscreen, right? This is a 32-inch touchscreen. And they were not freely available during that point of time. So they used to cost around 40,000 rupees. So for a brand to spend 40,000 rupees on a touchscreen per store without even, mm, having any solid ROI to show for it initially was a huge challenge. We used to have challenges of lack of internet connectivity. This is pre-Geo days and all, right? So lack of internet connectivity in the stores was a challenge for us. So after almost 1 or 2 years of working on this idea, we decided that, this doesn't make much of a business sense. And when we actually looked around, the startup scene itself was, suddenly waking up, and there were a lot of VCs, funding companies left, right, and center. And at that point, we said that, we have to be in the B2C segment, because that's where all the funding is happening. That's where all the exciting things are happening. Uh, so we have sort of, pivoted to a pure play B2C app for a period of time. And so what that app usually, you see a lot of these quick commerce companies, right? Zepto, and there are a lot many in fashion also that you see these days, right? So we tried that idea back in 2000, 16, around that time. So essentially, for building the initial product, we had built inventory integrations into almost uh, all the major brands in the country. So we thought, what if we could let a person in Chennai shop from a store in Mumbai? Or what if we could let a person sitting in Mumbai, like let's say sitting in Andheri, shop from a store in BKC and get that product delivered to him within, 90 minutes. So that's when we, pivoted completely to this B2C idea of, Find, the Go Find app that we used to have.
Mhm.
And that also worked for good 2 years. But the infrastructure, right, in terms of the quick commerce or delivery, this thing was not as developed as it is right now. So we couldn't simply, and of course it's a very capital intensive idea to deliver products within 60 minutes, 90 minutes, and things like that. So we realized after doing that for almost 2 3 years that you know actually the products that we are building, we're actually the end, the customer for us is not the guy who's actually shopping, is probably the eventual customer of the product, but it's actually the retailer, it's actually the brand. So let's start building out more technology that a brand can use, whether they want to sell online, whether they want to sell on their website, on a marketplace, or on their store. What else can we build for our customer who's the retailer? So we sort of pivoted completely to building a SaaS platform for retailers. And again, after 2 3 years, right, in 20, actually starting in 2019 2020, we used to run a lot of the experiments that we were talking about, right? So we used to have this AI and ML team that used to work on a a lot of interesting problems, retail problems at that point of time. So that experiment over 2, 3 years gave us a massive head start. Right now, if you ask in 2025, everyone is talking about AI, everyone is talking about agentic commerce and things like that. So we sort of built the foundations for this back in 2019, 20, and 21. So we were actually, this actually helped us position ourselves better right now in 2025. So we had these, 3 or 4 good pivotal moments through our journey. And one of the things that you've realized is that as long as you keep your heads down and execute, things will eventually, work out.
That is so cool. I mean, it actually teaches us that there doesn't have to be just one pivotal moment. There can be
Yeah.
multiple of them, and all of them obviously lead to better things. So that's great. But you spoke about, Geo and its time,
Mm.
and Find was acquired by Reliance Geo in 2020. So, what does it mean for a startup to be backed by such a large company? And how does it change the way you think about growth, innovation, and culture? If you can just
Mm.
tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. So I think the number one thing, right, as founders, one of the things that you worry about
Mhm.
uh, is making payroll at the end of the month. When you're funded, probably, you don't worry about it, but that's sort of a worry that, most founders have, right? You have to pay your team at the end of the month,
Right.
right? So what happens when you become part of a, large corporate house is that that's one worry that has been completely, taken away from our plates.
Right.
What that allows us to uh, do is to think about things with a sort of, long enough timeline.
Mm.
The short-term thinking that this, moving from one funding round to the next that, usually put founders into,
Yeah.
that's completely taken away. We have a much longer view of things. Our timelines are much, much, longer in terms of where we want to be and things like that. So that's one of the biggest, advantages that we have. Another thing is that we've been building products for retailers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Reliance Retail is the largest retailer in the country. So suddenly you get the largest playground that you could ever imagine, right, for your commerce platform.
Yeah.
So over the last few years, we have been implementing a lot of our technology uh, into, Reliance Retail. So that opportunity is massive. To actually build a product or a platform is one thing. To see that being used across so many transactions, right? That's very exciting as a entrepreneur. And I think you also tend to get a lot of financial discipline also because being part of a public company, you're also being public company, right?
Right.
So you learn that top line growth is not everything. I think back in 2015, 16, now we used to talk a lot about GMV, things like that. But at the end of the day, uh, it needs to translate into your bottom line. That's something that we have learned over the last few years. Then you also end up setting up systems and processes that might look like a lot of work in the moment, especially with regards to compliance, legal, and things like that. But it actually makes your business more investable when you look from outside from a shareholder perspective. So these are some of the things that has happened to us after the Geo acquisition.
That's amazing. But this is more of a question that I have personally.
Yeah.
What was the feeling when you realized, or when you almost were certain that this deal is going through, or you're getting backed by a company that big? What was the feeling that came up to your mind personally?
I think honestly, we are really, really excited and mostly excited about our investors
Mm-hmm.
that over a period of 7 years that we were able to give a really good exit to people who backed us back in 2012. And in our journey, right, probably we have never raised funding from any tier one VCs that you hear about. Most of our funding has been from players like, IFL, Google, K Capital, and other firms like that.
Right.
So the fact that we were able to give an exit
Mm-hmm.
when startup exits were not, the norm back in 2018-19 period, right?
Correct.
So that was really, exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, your journey has been very interesting, and having built through over a decade, in the last decade, how do you see the Indian startup ecosystem evolving? Obviously, it's changed a lot since you began.
Yeah.
But what excites you about the next wave?
Yeah. So I think continuing from my, previous answer, right? So we had uh, an M&A that was, happening to us, right? But
Right.
these days you see a lot of those startups getting listed.
Yeah.
The exit opportunities for startups, founders, and investors have simply moved on from, just being M&A to and actually listing
Mhm.
and going public. So that is very, exciting to see. And I think overall, I think the number of startups that gets, created every year, I think there is now this lesser fear of failing amongst entrepreneurs. There is no stigma associated with being a failed entrepreneur. There is, I feel there is nothing called a failed entrepreneur, honestly. But there's no stigma attached to being a second time or third time, founder. Uh, I also see that what's happening if you look from, outside India also, and even within India, right? What is happening in the AI space. And I really, really believe that AI plus India specific problem or an India scale problem is a very good intersection to work at this point of time. And probably the listing of a company, a tech company that is working in that sector could be even one of the largest IPOs in the future.
Now, that brings me to the last question, which is, if you had to leave our audience of B school students and young entrepreneurs with one mantra for navigating their careers and ventures, what would it be?
I think I think this is something, even I do with my daughter itself, right? So uh, it's very, very important to find something that you truly, truly love to do.
Mhm.
Because whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're in a career, or whether you're in any path that you take, right? Uh, Challenges are going to come your way. Uh, how do you sort of, tackle those challenges, right? Like, for instance, if you take me itself, right? I started out as a designer. It's something probably I would do even today, even if you were not willing to, pay me. Even if you take everything else away from me and put me in like a 10,000 rupees per month job, what would I do? I would probably go back to, designing. So finding something you truly love is sort of a cheat code. You're actually probably even starting a race almost, halfway down the track. And that I feel is, as people who are just graduating from these schools, that's something that you should spend a lot of time figuring out
Right.
what you truly love.
That's a great advice, and it was a great conversation that I had with you. I'm sure our audience is going to love it as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, SMG.
SMG's manager's mantra is innovating fearlessly, building with purpose, and leading through challenges. Be smart viewers, we hope this conversation sparks ideas for your own journey. Share your thoughts with us at bsmart.edit at bsmail.in. Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram for more such insightful and inspiring content. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.